YouTube, what's up guys? So I know what you're thinking, that there are a billion JoJo ranking tier list sort of videos, and what the hell is gonna make this one so damn special? Well, I was recently taking a look just through all these sort of JoJo ranking videos, and honestly a lot of them are just quite dumb. Like, there's a whole bunch of like ranking gayest JoJo parts and gay this, gay that. I figured I'd try to make a ranking video where it's just a little more serious, a little more thought-provoking than ranking, JoJo characters' fucking penis size. So I'm going to be going over parts 1 through 7, not part 8, because truthfully I haven't started part 8 yet. I'm personally waiting for it to finish, so I'm going to just be going over the main characters of parts 1 through 7, Jonathan, Joseph, Jotaro, you get it, right? So, and for Jolene and Johnny for parts 6 and 7 specifically, I'm not going to be going too much into detail for that because I know a lot of you guys are anime only watchers and I don't want to fucking be the one to spoil anything. Okay, so for Jonathan, I think it's pretty safe to assume that Jonathan is just going to be on the definite saint tier of this sort of ranking tier list, whatever the hell you want to call it. Look at this visual I made for reference, but I'll tell you right now, guys, Jonathan is going to be, the most farthest right of any of the other, main characters. So I think a lot of you guys will agree with me on this. This is a pretty non-controversial placing on my tier list. But just for the few delusional people that need me to actually explain why I'm putting Jonathan here on the tier list, man, just look back at Phantom Blood. Even from episode 1, guys, he was clearly just groomed and raised to be a gentleman by his father, for God's sake. Clearly the way that Jonathan treats Irina with a lot of respect. Some people might even call it simping, but in this tier list, that's actually going to make him really far end of the spectrum, alright? So this is actually good for Jonathan. Also keep in mind, guys, when Jonathan met Speedwagon was so taken away by how much of a gentleman Jonathan was that he basically, made Speedwagon see the light and, make him stop his thug ways, alright? And one might even say he indirectly caused Speedwagon to, be a billionaire and find the Speedwagon Foundation. Alright, that's all the stuff I'm going to give for Jonathan. If you still don't believe me that Jonathan deserves to be that place in my tier list, man, go rewatch Phantom Blood. I'm done explaining this. Okay, so Joseph. Now, this might be where opinions start to diverge a bit, but honestly, looking back at part 2, I would not place Joseph that far behind Jonathan. Now, for those of you that remember early in part 2 when Joseph pulled out that Tommy gun against Straizo and just nailed him, obviously Smokey was kind of, what the hell are you doing? But Joseph only did that because he knew he was a vampire. And Joseph even said, if he's not a vampire, if he's just a normal innocent man, then I would gladly turn myself into jail. So something as small as that clearly shows that Joseph is a guy that takes responsibility for his action. Now, the main reason I put Joseph this high on the tier list is because, really, for those of you that again remember early in part 2, there was a scene where Joseph, Smokey, and Granny Irina were dining out one night, and there was a member of the Mafia giving them a lot of shit because, they brought Smokey in the building and Smokey was black. And this makes a lot of sense because during this time period, again, there was a lot of racism in America. If you don't believe me, go read a history book. And of course, Joseph whooped his ass and, he wasn't taking that shit. And it just really makes you think that during this time period, for Joseph, for his basically best friend at the time to be, an African American, that's really telling because he doesn't follow the racist stigma that was really prevalent in the whenever part 2 took place. And I know for some of you that might kind of be stretching it, connecting like real world racism to fucking JoJo. But keep in mind, guys, if racism just wasn't a thing that existed in JoJo, I mean, why would that Mafia member have done that sort of shit during that perfect time period where racism was indeed rampant in, America? So, basically for that reason alone, that's good enough for me to put Joseph maybe on like the 75th percentile of, my little bell curve that is morality, I guess. Okay, for Jotaro, this is when opinions, might probably be a little different, but honest to God, I would not put Jotaro that far behind Joseph. You know, I understand calling your mom a bitch and just being pretty rude to people, beating up people, and he's kind of living a pretty delinquent, you know, high school boy lifestyle. I understand that's worthy of, you know, saying he's an asshole, but guys, really look at him through a different lens, and I think you'll start to see that he's actually a pretty good guy. Now, there was a really great video by Frankistador just analyzing and going over Jotaro as a character. And honestly, if you just watch that whole video, I think you will clearly see what I mean when I place Jotaro this high on the list. And one of the main points he brings up in the video, which I love, is that Jotaro, while yes, on the surface level, he kind of seems like an asshole, you know, he's just not the best at really showing his emotion. I mean, really look back at part 3. I mean, his whole journey is simply because he wanted to go help his mom, right? Yes, he called her a bitch, but when he realized that she was sick and he had to fucking kill Dio in order to save her, he didn't hesitate to go on that trip with his grandfather Joseph and, you know, basically risk his life to save his mom. And also, correct me if I'm wrong, but aside from Dio, who isn't even a freaking human at that point, Jotaro hasn't even killed anyone. I mean, let that sink in. I mean, at first sight, when I first saw Jotaro, I mean, I really thought he'd be the type of guy to just fucking kill people. Like, he really looked like a brute, but look at all his fights. He didn't fucking kill people. Even Steely Dan, who did that really horrible thing to Joseph, and he just did a lot of horrible shit to him, he literally just beat him up and presumably let him live. I mean, yeah, I mean, you could say he beat him up near death, you know, whatever, but honestly, I think the fact that Jotaro didn't kill any human in Stardust Crusaders is pretty telling. And of course, there are little hints throughout part 3 that just show that Jotaro is as much as an asshole as we might have thought through the first few episodes of the season, right? Now, of course, there's that whole cigarette thing with that sort of almost filler episode where the guy's disguising himself as Jotaro, and Joseph says, "Oh, Jotaro, show us that cigarette trick you do with your mouth," right? Where he like drops all 5 cigarettes in his mouth. And, you know, it's just little tiny things like that that really show that Jotaro isn't, you know, as much as an asshole as we once thought. And I know this technically doesn't count, but I mean, just looking at Jotaro in part 4, 5, and even 6, just the sort of mentor role he plays with like the younger generation. I mean, it's really hard to believe for you to convince me that Jotaro is a straight asshole. Yes, he's blunt a lot of the time, but I think when you just really analyze him from parts, you know, every part after part 3, it's pretty clear that he means well a lot of the time. Okay, so for Josuke, this definitely is going to be a little more controversial, but I will place him just a little behind Jotaro. Now, I know there's a lot of part 4 lovers out there. A lot of people love part 4, like it's their favorite part. And before you send me death threats and before you send me a bomb in my damn mail, just hear me out. Now, in Josuke's case, he's almost the opposite of Jotaro in the fact that Jotaro is kind of sleazy the way he interacts with people and just talks. But if you really look at it, his actions are pretty, you know, not super bad a lot of the time. Whereas Josuke, yes, he's very superficially very nice, very great person, and he's definitely, you know, a good person. He's definitely not a bad person, don't get it mixed up. But I think Josuke has actually done a few sleazy things throughout part 4, which, you know, might make me dock off some points. For instance, Josuke, you know, hustling a bunch of money from people using Shigechi's harvest, that one episode. Well, it's a pretty smart idea. You know, it's definitely not something a righteous person would do, I would say. And of course, there's that time where he tried scamming Rohan in that dice game and he got his house burned down. And then, like, the episode after, he sees him in the bus and tries to avoid eye contact with Rohan, man. And, you know, I think just these few cases, you can clearly see Josuke is prone to doing some sleazy sort of things. And, you know, comparing him to Jotaro, I think actions speak louder than words. And while Jotaro is mostly an asshole just through words when he speaks with people, I think, you know, Josuke doing a lot of delinquent shit throughout part 4, you know, I think that's why I would put him just a little behind Jotaro. However, one thing I did think about was how, again, stands we know are almost personifications, like manifestations of who the stand user like really is deep down. And of course, there's that whole thing where Crazy Diamond is freaking, really selfless. He can heal other people, fix other things, but not himself. Whereas Jotaro's stand is clearly just a, force of nature. It can stop time. There's not really much selflessness in Star Platinum, I would say. So, really, I could honestly be convinced that Josuke is maybe higher than Jotaro. Maybe I'll switch their spots. But, definitely I would say he's behind Joseph and Jonathan. Now, in Giorno's case, he's definitely not as controversial as Josuke or Jotaro on this list. I would honestly just put him flat in the middle, like 50th percentile, just neutral territory. I mean, really think about it, guys. This thing is like the byproduct of Jonathan and Dio. Jonathan, we of course know, is on the far right of this list, and if Dio were on this list, it's easy to say that he would be on the fucking far left. So Giorno kind of being a combination of both of them, it's really, it makes a lot of sense why I would put him flat in the middle. So the way I would describe Giorno as a whole to justify this is he's a person that does righteous things in just really brutal ways, right? Just think about earlier on in Golden Wind. I mean, he made Popo blow his brains out in order to, avenge an old man that died by Black Sabbath. And of course, let us not forget the ending of Golden Wind. Before I say anything, if you have not finished part 5, skip this. But the end of Golden Wind, where he unleashes, Golden Experience Requiem, and he puts Diablo in that infinite death loop. I mean, whether or not you think Diablo deserved that shit, you cannot convince me that it's not such a brutal stand. It is quite easily like the stand I would not want to be on the other side of, right? And of course, but he did all that to make Italy a better place and to make a lot of people safer and the whole drugs thing, which again goes back to what I'm saying. Giorno is the type of person that will do righteous actions, but just in really brutal ways. He did that shit to Diablo, but it was all in good heart, right? So, again, just looking back at Giorno, I think there's a lot of more scenarios where you can say similar to this, and that's why I would put him really just in the middle of this list. Okay, so now we're at Jolene. Don't worry, I won't be going over any major Stone Ocean spoilers. If you're an anime-only watcher, I'll try to keep it simple. But Jolene, honestly, I would put maybe just a little behind Giorno. Now, of course, we know Jolene kind of had a troubled childhood because, Jotaro wasn't there for her. That's just some brief backstory. Again, I won't go really much into detail. But, this Jotaro not being there essentially caused Jolene to kind of go into a phase of just being a delinquent. And, of course, we all know the premise of Stone Ocean, that she ends up, she starts in jail, which is similar to Jotaro in part 3. And, just looking back at the way Jolene interacts with people, she can be quite bitchy sometimes. But again, actions over words. There's pretty much every JoJo character aside from Jonathan can, have mood swings and talk shit to people, right? But in Jolene's case, looking back at her motives and actions throughout Stone Ocean, I can't really recall a lot of them that are very, kind, really righteous sort of motives. Like, I know she'll definitely, be there to save her other friends in Stone Ocean, but really, if you're not, a close friend or family to Jolene, it seems like she really doesn't give a shit about you. And I kind of say this all I'm hating on Jolene, man, fuck that bitch. I hate a woman JoJo character. No, I actually like her a lot. She's one of my actual favorite JoJos. But just in this tier list, I have maybe I could see her being a little above Giorno because she's just not as, brutal. I don't think she's actually killed anyone in part 6 as well, which, there's arguments I can see on both ends with Jolene. She's definitely more of a wild card for me. I want to hear what you guys think with Jolene. Where would you put her? And, of course, if you're going to discuss that, make sure to give some spoiler warnings, okay, if you're going to go over, the ending and just any plot-heavy material. Now, for Johnny, man, I could really wholeheartedly say he's not going to be on anywhere near the right side of the damn list. He's straight up, he does shit and it's just really hard to defend him being anywhere near Saint territory. Now, basically, just the main reason I'm gonna put Johnny this low on the tier list is simply because he is pretty much almost as, maybe even more brutal than Giorno a lot of the time. But his actions are straight up aren't righteous, like, at all. I mean, there's a lot of arguments I see that, you know, the main antagonist of Part 7 is the good guy and Johnny is the bad guy, if anything, which honestly should tell you a lot. You know, maybe I'll have a spoiler video just really explaining why, but honestly, guys, I think if you read Part 7 from front to end, you will wholeheartedly agree with me on why Johnny's this low on the list, right? I mean, there's just some shit he does, man. You really cannot. Jonathan ain't gonna be doing that stuff anytime soon. I mean, let's just put it that way. Alright guys, well that's my tier list, parts 1 through 7. If you are caught up with part 8, I would love to see where you would put Josuke from part 8 on the list. Let me know in the comments. If you're from Reddit or anything, you know, make sure to, you know, let me know in the thread what you think, if you would change anything, whether you agree or disagree. But until next time guys, hopefully this might have, you know, engaged a sort of really nice conversation on the JoJo parts and really make you reflect on everything that's happened. But until next time guys, have a good day and thank you for watching.